So that really sent a strong signal and pushed the government to think hard if the Soviet model is failed. And actually, they recognize it failed. If you give national rights, if you give the regional national status, they tend to split away. So it is a time that they try to rethink another model so that they won't follow the Soviet Union's mistake. Also in late 1980s and 90s, there is a worldwide democratic movement going on in the world, so that also kind of really sort of pushed the Chinese government to think whether this is where does it lead to. For Tibetan case, in 1987 and 1989, we have Lhasa uprising. Again, a strong signal that indicates that there is a tendency, there is an aspiration for separation. So, but also in terms of the change in policy, because previously I talked about how important that leaders can make a difference, or leaders can make local decisions. In 1980s, we have the 10th Panchen Lama, and also a group of people followed him that been very strongly advocating for Tibetan education. But he passed away in 1989. So in 1990s, we don't have that kind of strong figure there at the central level to push forward that kind of policies, or try to follow up with what has been established in 1980s, where it is relatively relaxed period. And then finally, it is the sort of the successful marketization of China's economy that give their confidence that, okay, see what Soviet Union has been, done mistake. We can have our own model. We can have our own solution for our minority issue. So that is one time they tried to come up with a new model. In 1989, there is a Chinese scholar, actually he's a very famous sociologist, come up with a model called pluralism within unity structure, or it is translated as one nation with diversity. So his idea is that in order to avoid what is happening in Soviet Union, let's build, because China has been following Soviet Union's model, not only minority policy, also other policies, and it has been on the way toward a multinational state building, which they think it is failed in the Soviet Union. So the direction is moving, according to this model, is toward building up a mono-national state. So you have one nation, but of course we have ethnic groups, and examples were drawn from the United States, how successful it is to have a melting pot model, so that the national unity will be held together, will not fall. So according to his proposal, he suggests there should be a high level of Chinese national identity, also a lower level of 56 ethnic identities. Of course, this concept of Chinese nation, 中华民族, was not invented in 1980s or 90s. It was there before, before the communist government was in power. But it was really put forward and stressed since 1990s when they are in searching for a new model. According to the sociologists, that creating two levels of the identities will not necessarily create a replacement scenario, or will not be these two identities should not be contradictory, but they should be sort of a dual identity, ideally for all the minority groups. And won't go on longer. So in 1990s, we saw a lot of changes in the government official discourse about minority issue and policies. And even till today, that sort of national group in Chinese is called Minzu. And in the past, it is quite clear, even for my generation, when we fill out school forms, there is always a column for your, so for what group are you belong to, you have nationality. But I put Tibetan there. But we don't, that was sort of the thing that is from the past, because nationality, now you can't have 56 nationalities, you only have one nationality. But then it was carefully translated as ethnic groups from 1990s. An example was some of the offices at national level that take care of minority issues were in the past translated as the Committee for Nationalities Affairs, now translated as the Committee for Ethnic Affairs. So there is a change in that terms. What it means for Tibetans also, as well as the others, especially the ones who are living in a regional area, so having an autonomous regional area, bigger minorities like Uyghur, like Mongolia, Korea, and China, there is actually a downgraded status. You are no longer a national minority. Now it is an ethnic minority. What does that mean? Those terms, what does those terms mean? According to Bulat, who was a scholar, a Mongolian scholar, it actually reflects the policy goal that if you are entitled as the national minority, your autonomous status is recognized, that it is recognized and tolerated that you have your own system, you have your own special sort of status within the framework of the nation. But if you are ethnic minority, the goal, the ultimate goal, is for you to merge into the mainstream society. So there is actually that kind of change in the status, and there is a tendency of trying to downplay the so-called minority issue, etc. So that is how the solution was given. So for this, when they adopted this model, of course, they need regulations or laws to enforce it. Otherwise, you have autonomous regulations for the autonomy. For autonomous regions, you have a whole set of autonomous sort of regulations, laws that equal minority equality was promised, right? You have a whole set of policy that recognize the equality, and then now there is a change in the model. So in order to try to avoid that, the minority say, okay, you have promised this, but how can you give another solution? So laws has been revised according to this new model for minority policy. For the language issue, we have Article 3 of 2007 version that has been really stressing on promoting Putonghua as a common language. So from now on, from 2007, the law starting to refer as using common language more than, say, talking about minority language. So common language is really put forward at the center of the stage. That's so far for what I've talked about, the sort of the basic, not basic, but background, why there's policy change, etc., etc. And I will give you a case study of one of the Tibetan prefectures in Shinzong. The yellow part is where the autonomous region and also 10 autonomous prefecture and 3 autonomous county are there. And this is the map of Qinghai province, and the red color is where Yushu Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture is located. It actually is the biggest prefecture, and it has the largest Tibetan population within the province. Generally, as you can expect it, that it is sparsely populated. The population is around 2,500,000, so we're not talking about millions. But it is, but if 90%, 97% of Tibetan population, if you go into the rural area, it is 100% that those are Tibetans and speak a language of one of the Tibetan dialect. But in terms of written, it is standard. So for the education, there is around 203 schools, 14 secondary schools for the prefecture, in both the lower secondary, also the upper secondary sections, and also some of the teacher training schools are now emerged as the secondary schools. The prefecture has the lowest, in terms of the education, they're not doing well. It has the lowest school enrollment, lowest college attendance, highest illiterate rate of the province. But what sort of not important, but what's special about this prefecture is you have the highest concentration of Tibetan, the biggest population of Tibetan within the province. It is the farthest sort of from the capital city. It has the poorest sort of transportation system, etc., etc. And you would generally imagine that they are using Tibetan to teach because that is, bilingualism happens when you have more contact with outsiders. But for this prefecture, they have been using Chinese to teach in their schools. For the language environment of the prefecture, I have just put these two signs as an example. First is a road sign that you travel around the prefecture, it is always put in Chinese. So whether you are an outside traveler or you're government officials, bilingual, or you are a nomad who just had a motto to travel, the road signs are always in Chinese. And actually, this is only part of what we have used as the example for the domains. If you go into the government, the service, of course, is in Chinese. Tibetan is, of course, used. If you look at the policy document, that it is always give a position there in the policy document that both languages should be used at the official domains. Also, the services, postal service, health. Also, if you go to a court, if you are not speaking Chinese, you are entitled to have an interpreter, etc., etc. It is on the policy document. In reality, if you go into the government, and I actually talked to the government officials there, so the only occasion when Tibetan is used for the policy document is during the big conference of People's Congress meeting, of political consultation meeting. Those are big symbolic, where people can make suggestions but don't have the real power. I remember somebody said about that. During those meetings, the document is made available in Tibetan, but intercommunication between the officers, inside documents are always only available in Chinese. Of course, as a prefecture, autonomous prefecture status, you might find the document that has the title, the sort of the letterhead in Tibetan, more or less like a symbolic gesture. So about that symbolic sort of use of Tibetan, I will show another example of this picture, right? This picture is a hotel owned by the prefecture government. It's called Yushu Hotel. And so in big Chinese letter, you can hotel in this usual hotel. But the Tibetan is very up there, almost that you can't really see clearly. And then down there are two signs of the stores that comes up with both language. But those are a sort of a policy action put forward last year, specifically after the political consultation meeting was over, because a lot of representatives asked for this, And also in 2007, in August, they are going to have a big sort of summer event. You always have this kind of cultural festival and also attract foreign investors or investors from China, inland cities. So there is summer. We always have this big event put together. Also, nomads enjoy it. You have horse race, you have yak race, and people come here to shop. Because to prepare that event, this policy action was put forward that signs for the stores that has to be made available in both language. But again, lots of Tibetans find that there are mistakes in the spellings, the words were too small, or it's disproportionated. In general, if you walk in any of the town, it is meant to be bilingual, meaning you hear bilingual, you hear people talking, you hear those signs. It's meant to be bilingual town, like that. Also, in terms of the way the government staff is recruited or contracted worker is recruited, sometimes government offers some kind of exams, and those exams are taken in Chinese. The only possible is that if you are applying for a job, if you are taking an exam for a Tibetan language class teacher, then your exam was given in Tibetan. Otherwise, if you are looking for any kind of jobs, it is only available in Tibetan. That issue, actually, we talked about that issue with the government officials, and they agree, especially the Education Bureau and also the office that works specifically on the language issue. They are very strong opponents toward this kind of policy, but they don't have the real power to shift it. In 1995, I will speak quickly about the regulations on Tibetan language and the scripts of the prefecture level. In 1995, it is still said, if you read the blue ones, I'm sorry that it's not very easy to read many words on the PowerPoint, that it is still regulates that secondary schools and primary schools shall teach mainly in Tibetan. So this is the policy, the regulations for Tibetan language in 1995. It is still available. And also Article 19 is for the provision of teacher training. So teachers should be trained in both languages. But the regulations for autonomy was revised in 2005. Article 51 it says that secondary schools and primary schools which recruit mainly the Tibetan students shall teach mainly in Tibetan, offer Tibetan and Chinese language classes, teach in both languages, offer English classes when conditions allow, to promote and spread Putonghua and standard Chinese scripts. So there is actually a contradictory clause within one article. And this clearly shows how competing forces work. On one way, you have the spread of Putonghua from the government side, and then also trying to see that the instructional language should be generally transfer into Chinese language. But you also have the autonomous regional laws practiced in the past, also with the reality that lots of the students are not really good at learning in Chinese. All those works play together, and then you come with an article that, within one article that says if a school that recruit mainly Tibetan students, that it should teach in Tibetan, and in the second clause it should teach in both languages. So it is kind of confusing situation there. So I have a case for a secondary school which is mainly recruited, the Tibetan students. 100% students' body is Tibetan, and mostly from rural areas. It is bilingual environment on the campus. It claims to be Chinese medium teaching, but lots of time they're not even able to offer Chinese medium teaching. It is a mixed code teaching using both languages. I have tried to collect my data in a way. So textbooks are available in Chinese only. Actually, if you talk with the students and teachers, they all agree that it is more benefiting for the students if they are taught in Tibetan, but we're not able to do so. And if you go into the school and you see the sort of the hidden policy, what really matters inside the school, that all postures, important, school fee note, sort of regulations for the teachers, everything, it is Chinese, and it gives a sort of a superior status to Chinese. In terms of local perspectives, that what we are doing inside school are also affected by the language status in general in the society. Also the language attitude by the people, and it really a result of the combination of the process of mono-nation state building, because Putonghua was pushed forward as the super language, and that became the major force of changing school language. And also you have the other counterforce of existing autonomous regional rights that you have a right to use your language, etc. And there is another, of course, thing that you can't avoid is there's always association of Tibetan language with local nationalism. That's why leaders were hesitant to be clear about supporting of mother tongue instruction. And there is the whole area is also going through the monetization. You always hear the school says we provide Chinese teaching so that the students probably will be better prepared in job marketing, etc., etc. But there is actually a very interesting thing about bilingual education, the concept itself. Different people use this language, they use concept for different purposes. And bilingual education at one time can mean using Chinese to teach. You still have a language, Tibetan language class. Or it can mean Tibetan medium teaching, or the mixed code teaching. But different groups, even different leaders, when I want to promote Tibetan medium teaching, because it is so easily to be accused if I say I promote Tibetan medium teaching, I use the safe word of bilingual education. If one wants to promote Chinese medium teaching, again, it's a safe box if you just use bilingual teaching. So bilingual education is kind of a sort of political correct word in all these autonomous regions, but probably not so in elsewhere. Also, there's a top-down process so that teachers and students were not involved in the decision making. So the pedagogical concern is always not included, and there is historic reason for that. And for my conclusion, that I think that there are, of course, many forces at play, but major forces still remain as the political force, the political consideration of trying to have a national unity or building up a national identity, a homogeneous national identity, that overshadow the educational concerns, and then create the identity issue that if you want to replace, or you can have an additional one. And then my suggestion is that there is a need to review the framework for minority language policy and definition of the national identity. Again, that even there is tendency of pushing the autonomous regional rights to the shrinking status, but it still should be the space for identity representation and the means for equal educational opportunity and outcome. Finally, this is a photo that I took when I was one of the school, and you always see this if you travel there. You have Chinese on one side and Tibetan on another side, and those are the slogans like "study for future," etc. But in whose language? This is my point. Thank you.